I think there's probably been moments that have been hard. I take things on quite personally as well. You know, if a client has a complaint, I'll take that personally. Or if things aren't going our way, or if the industry's a bit quiet, we haven't got those leads coming through like we should have, or we haven't got enough staff to take on the workflow that we've got. You know, I think there's moments where you go through hard times. So the last couple of years have been pretty hard, been pretty lean. You know, you get a lot of projects come in, you spend a lot of time on them, then all of a sudden they disappear, they get benched, or the client doesn't want to spend that money anymore, and the value's not in the project. There's definitely those sort of moments. You're always going to have a job where a mistake will happen. You know, it's construction, mistakes are going to happen. It's pretty important that you put your hand up, you own it. So yeah, that was my mistake, I'll fix it.
What is success to you?
I think it was a learn to love it experience.
And there's always pitfalls that you can fall in, but then you've got no one else to blame but yourself.
Number one thing if you're struggling is to catch up with people about it.
This episode is brought to you by Forte, specialist in refined timber surfaces for inside and out. From elegant flooring and paneling to durable cladding and decking, Forte delivers unparalleled performance where it matters most. Their products are crafted to elevate every space, combining natural beauty with technical precision and enduring design with innovation. Discover more at forte.co.nz. Cool. Justin, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having us. Stoked to be here.
Yeah, no, we're just talking about like family life. You had your kids pretty young, right? How old were you when you had your first one?
So 2022, when I had my first son.
Wow.
Yeah, so nice and young.
That's awesome. And you're what, 40 now?
40 now, yeah, a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Oh, mate, it does.
No, it's cool. Like, I think it's when you're a young dad, you have, like, we talk just off air around, you just have so much energy, eh? Like, you just throw the kids around and, like, they want to jump on you. It's very different than, imagine if you started right now at 40.
Oh, I wouldn't have the energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super important. Like we were saying, to have that energy to do exhaust on them. Kids are active, they want to spend time with their parents, so being able to do that on an active front is pretty cool.
Yeah, how old are your kids now? What's the ranges?
So I've got two boys and a girl. The boys are 17, 14, and a little girl that's 10. So yeah, she's
that's cool.
Yeah.
How do you find the differences between the boys and girl?
Boys are pretty easy going. Girls, she can be pretty challenging, but she wraps dad around her little finger and gets away with everything, as they do. So yeah.
No, it's true. I've got three girls, one boy.
Oh wow!
And the girls are. Well, I was only used to the girls, right? So I thought that's what they were all like. And then my boy came, but he's only like 18 months old, but you can already start to see the difference. He's just like a lad, Yeah. Break stuff and just like a bit more like aggressive, but also at the same time a lot more like easy, but more one-dimensional.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
And with the girls are a lot of emotions, a lot of...
Yes, 100%, yeah. And I guess it's only going to get worse as they get older too. As she sort of dives into her teens, I would imagine there's going to be a few head clashes between her and her mum. But I'll stay well out of that, I think. Yeah,
I can already see that coming now. We're already there, mate. We're already there. We've got like a 6-year-old that acts like a teenager sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just she says a bunch of stuff and then I'm all confused and I'm like, what were we talking about? What did I do?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So, no, we're already there. But talk to me a little bit about you, where you grew up when you were a little fella.
Oh, me. So I was born and bred on a small island off the east coast of New Zealand called Chatham Islands.
No way.
Yeah. So that was my childhood. All my extended family still live down there. Pretty isolated island, community of about 850, I think. So very small. So I had an amazing childhood growing up. Had quite a large farm. My backyard was just the ocean and the bush, So I grew up fishing, diving, hunting, just being an absolute menace running around the place, motorbikes, all the rest. So that was pretty cool. Had a lot of my family down there, extended family. We all sort of lived down the same road, farms neighbouring each other. So continuously down at your cousin's place, and you're in the backyard building huts and doing what kids do. So unfortunately on the island they don't cater for secondary schooling. So when I would have been 12, went off to boarding school in the mainland in Christchurch. Spent 5 years there, which was an experience. Going from a small community of 850 to a school that had 850. Your eyes open pretty quickly. So that was cool. Went through high school, made a great group of friends, and the boarding hostel was cool because the background from a lot of the boys there were from rural aspects, so we all had a lot in common. But yeah, so after school, I sort of wasn't really too sure what I was going to do. So essentially, I was always pretty good with outdoors. Everything was to do with my hands. I was always building stuff or fixing stuff. So naturally fell into place that I was going to get into carpentry. I went back to the island because the folks were building quite a large lodge down there. So I went back and helped the builder out down there for a while, and an opportunity came about that a guy in Tauranga, through the builder I knew, was looking for an apprentice. And I thought, hey, this is me. I enjoy this. I'm going to go and give this a nudge. So there we are. Went out to Tauranga and started my apprenticeship.
Whoa. Okay. Well, let me just roll back a little bit. So 800 people on the island. How did your grandparents there, or how did they move there? How did you get to live on the island?
So my mum was a local. My father moved there. He came from Waimate down South Island. He went over there. I think he was a bit of a ratbag when he was a bit younger. So one of the older guys he hung out with and did a bit of sharing with, grabbed him by the hand and sort of said, hey mate, you come with me before you get in a bit of trouble. He moved down to the island, and I think he was down there doing a stint for a year or so, doing a bit of sharing and whatnot, and just loved it. Loved the community, loved the island, loved the backyard. And from there, he got into commercial diving. So he's a bit there. So he was full-time diving.
To be travelling, diving?
No, he started living on the island. Obviously met my mother through sharing and whatnot, and then fast forward a few years, he got the opportunity to start diving on a boat, commercial power diving. So he was diving for years, and then obviously cool. It all elaborated from there, and bought a farm and generated a family. Yeah.
What's the pros and cons of living in like a community of 800 on an isolated island?
I guess the biggest con would be the isolation. You're heavily reliant on shipping to get all your goods and produce in and out. So that shipping is, again, reliant on weather. So in terms of ordering your groceries, you're a month in front of yourself. So you're ordering a bulk lot of groceries, and if that ship's delayed, there's a few issues. You're going to the neighbours to borrow a cup of flour. So that's probably a big con, I guess. But the pros.
And the pros. Tell me the pros.
The pros are a tight knit community. Everyone. You're waving as you drive past people down the road. You pull over on the side of the road. You're having a chat. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And what does it do culturally? What is the cultural vibe like? Is it just like everyone? It's like a community vibe. Everyone's there for one another. Or is there like one random dude that like loses his head and like he has to be managed? Is there like what's a small community like that?
I think it's a very tight knit community. You're always going to have a few rat bags that'll be opportunists floating around. I mean, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
But they get pulled into line very quick.
Yeah.
There was one policeman on the island, but typically if someone was stepping out of line, they'd get pulled into line pretty quick because you knew who they were. Yeah. So there was never really any serious crime on the island, you could say. But like I say, there was always someone that was making an opportunity of a certain situation. But But yeah,
And are your parents still there?
parents are still there. Yep. Brother and sister are still there. They've got their families there. They have similar aged kids to what we have. Their kids are probably all off at high school at the moment, you know, so the parents are left at home to run the farms and do what they've got to do, and the kids are out in the mainland doing their schooling.
Yeah.
So
And then boarding school, what was that like? I mean, I'm from South Africa. I went to boarding school since I was like 10.
Yeah.
All the way up to 15, then moved to New Zealand, and I was here, went to boarding school here till I was 18. For me, it was very normal.
Yep.
Made a lot of friends. I was just around my mates all day, so for me, it was a good thing.
Yeah.
I know a lot of Kiwis I talk to are very like shit scared of boarding school. A lot of them have had negative experiences here. What was your sort of experience like being, away from the family? Was it the first? The first night you cry yourself to sleep?
Yeah, man, I think that's it. Like you hop on the plane and you're sort of waving goodbye to your parents, and you're like, I'll see you in 8 weeks, and it's sort of, it's pretty surreal. And you get to the school, you're from like a small town, and you get in there and you've got to make mates pretty quickly. And I think the first 6 months are always the hardest. And then once you get used to it, I loved it. I'm like, let's go. Put me on that plane. Yeah, I loved it. Thrived in that environment, I think. I always say that to my son. We joke about sending him to boarding school. And I think he'd love it. Around your mates all day, all night. You get up to all sorts of mischief. Your parents don't know. Yeah, so... Yeah, that was cool. I definitely didn't shy away from the boarding school. It's something that I would recommend almost, I think it helps you grow as a person as well. You got to fend for yourself. If you don't want to wash your clothes, you're going to be walking around in dirty clothes, so you got to get it done. And it's, it definitely is one thing I sort of, me and my wife joke about, like I say, we'd love to send our son to boarding school. He might grow up a bit, clean up after himself. But,
Yeah, it's a threat in our house as well, even with our little kids already. They just go, "Oh, Dad, you're not going to do that."
yeah. Empty threats. Yeah, totally.
But no, it's true though. You kind of like you're around by your friends. Generally, people that are there are from rural communities, so they are kind of like they have that mentality. Like, as I went to Auckland Grammar, big school, 2,500 boys or whatever, but the boarding school was only about 120 or something from memory. And actually, David Seymour was looking after us back then when I was there. Which is kind of weird now, seeing him in politics.
Yeah.
But yeah, the guys all there were like from Whangarei and like down South Island, and it wasn't city people. I actually got along with them a lot better than the day boys who were all like your Epsom, Mount Eden.
Yeah, 100%.
Fancy.
Similar backgrounds, right? So you got a lot in common. I had a good group of mates at school. Like I never had one set sort of group. I was always quite friendly, quite open to conversation, and so it was always good. I always had somewhere to go on the weekends. Obviously, boarding house would get me out of here. So I'd always go and stay at someone's house on the weekend, and we'd go and do some stuff and get up to a bit of mischief.
How funny is that? You talk about you have to make friends quickly. But you also have to make friends quickly in the sense of like, so you could go with them on the weekends to their 100%. Families.
Yeah, totally.
Family homes.
Yeah.
So it's part of the maneuvering to like, get out of
there. Totally. Get me out of here. Yeah.
Okay, so that's cool. So then after that, made your way to Tauranga.
Yep.
Was that like going to the big smoke at that point? Like
I guess it was. I didn't really know what to expect, to tell the honest truth. I was just at a time and a point in my life where I sort of was going, what am I going to do? I want to go and sort of test the world and see what I'm made of. Yeah, when that opportunity came about, I did. I jumped at it. I rang the builder up and said, hey, mate, I'm keen to come on. So I moved out. I had family that were living in Tauranga, so I sort of stayed with them for a while till I got my feet on the ground. And just loved it. As soon as I moved out there, like I say, it's such a beautiful spot. Golden beaches, the weather was amazing compared to the Chathams where it's always raining and it's windy and it can drive you down pretty quick. Just fell in love straight away. This is where I want to be. Yeah.
And was that first day like walking up onto the building site as an apprentice?
I think the crew that I was working for back then, they were a lot older. So we had an old labourer, he would have been in his 60s, had an older foreman, and then there was the boss who was sort of kicking around in his ute, and I was a young buck. So it was definitely a different sort of format, so I got used to that pretty quick, that I was the one that was doing the work, I was the sort of the grunt of the team, and I'd get out and get everything done. But the background that I came from, we were on the farm. You're always working, weekends, holidays. You're always working. So my work ethic was very strong, and the team respect, I think, that grew pretty strongly. They sort of realised this guy can work. We respect that. So I guess the good thing about having a small team was I didn't have to sit on a barra for 6 months. I got to upskill very quickly. And again, with my background, I was used to tools. I was always building stuff on the farm, so I could handle a chainsaw, skill saw. Give me the test and I'll do it. So that was cool. I guess opportunities came about a bit quicker in terms of being able to upskill, and my tasks were I guess I got the opportunity to get those more complicated tasks earlier than what maybe apprentices may get now, because the team was a bit smaller, and I just had to do it, and yeah, it was good.
Yeah, so they threw you in the deep end.
Yeah, 100%.
Earlier.
Yeah.
And then how long did it take you, like 4 years to get your apprenticeship done, or how long
Yeah,
was that?
so I got through it pretty quickly, 4 years. Again, I was pretty fortunate with my boss at the time. He was a keen diver and fisherman, and I would go back to the island for October through to the start of Jan, and I'd do the dive season. So
Cool.
I'd go back, and at that point, I'd met my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, and we'd bought a property, and so funds were tight. So I'd go to the island and I'd do the dive season for 3 months, come back with a sort of back pocket full of cash, and we'd sort of renovate the property, and then I'd get back into building and carry on. So yeah, I sort of ripped through my apprenticeship, and then by, I guess, the third year, my boss sort of saw the potential that I had, and he was put me on to sort of some large renovations that he'd say, mate, you've got what it takes, take the reins, get it done. And I'd have a few builders under me and an apprentice, and that was hard, very hard to be thrown in the deep end there. All of a sudden you're getting told what to do. Now I'm telling people what to do, and I'm still a third year apprentice. He would obviously monitor me pretty heavily, but I think he was giving me a lot of lead to see what my growth could potentially be. So that was a big turning curve, I think, in my sort of career. I sort of took that, and I love the challenge. I love to sort of deal with the clients and the details, and then just organise a team. This is what we've got to get done today, let's get it done.
And how old were you at that point?
Geez, when did I start? I would have been young. I would have been 21 maybe, 21, bordering 22. So, I wasn't overly young. Now it's not uncommon for young guys to be qualified at 22, 23. And the competence level, I believe now, with some of these younger guys, it's getting pretty high. So the amount of detail and stuff that we go through with a lot of our projects, they're exposed to a lot more than probably what we were back in the time. So yeah.
So it was kind of like you were building a lot of confidence probably then, early 20s.
Yeah, I think so. You're still
guys.
young. You're still maturing, I think. But yeah, the confidence grew.
And then how long did you work for that company for?
I became qualified, and I sort of stuck around, and then he sort of packed it in. My boss packed it in, and from there I sort of went out and contracted to a few local builders in town, and went back to the Chathams. There was a few opportunities down there to do a bit of construction. So I went down there for maybe a year. Took my family down with me, and gave the kids the opportunity that I had. on the Wild West. So yeah, and then moved back, and then sort of started trying to really establish a bit of a brand, I guess, and reputation.
And you didn't want to ever go back and live in the Chatham, so you might still one day, or is it just you're just too small? And
Yeah, look, I love the place. You know, I love to go back there. My family love it, the kids love it, but I think the opportunity is very restricted.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's kept me from going back, I believe, is the opportunity to grow and become, you know, as big as what we want to become, I guess.
yeah. So if you won the lotto, would you go back?
I don't know. I mean, your lifestyle changes, you know. Like, I'd go back a lot more.
Yeah.
It's not cheap to get there, but I believe my lifestyle has changed now. You know, I like to think I'm a bit of a social creature. You know, I like to get out with mates and play golf and surf, and you know. So I guess on the island, the culture on the island is very work orientated too. Everyone's busy. You know, you work all week. Weekends, you don't have a weekend. You know, if the sea's rough, that's your day off. If the sea's calm for a month, you're working every day. So that's kind of, you know, that's how they live day to day down there.
It's interesting, because you imagine they all live on an island, like they'd be a bit more, be like Fiji time, and be a bit more slower. And
and that is true. You know, it is island time as well, but you know, there's jobs to be done, and they'll get it done.
Yeah.
You know, so they're very heavily driven around that sort of aspect as well.
So, with your company, when you started it up, did you have a bit of an idea of how you wanted to be different, how you wanted to JBH to how you wanted it to be perceived, and how, you know, were there any like problems you saw in other companies that you were looking to solve? How did you guys want to be different?
Oh, look, I always think there's opportunities there to do better. I sort of started out, and I'd just take work. You know, you'd take anything, decks, fences, retaining walls, just to keep yourself busy. You know, I had a young family to feed, and I had a mortgage to pay, so I wasn't picky. Times were probably slightly tougher then, and I guess from there, JBH, I'd like to say, has been through maybe several phases in terms of where we want to be in our vision. Probably, I would imagine pre-COVID was where I sort of really started to think about what is the future for JBH, and what are we going to be, who are we going to be, and where are we going to position ourselves in the market. So yeah, I guess I started really diving deep into that, and then COVID hit, which allowed me to really reflect and sort of, you know, spend a bit of time on that. Once we sort of came out of COVID is when we looked to really rebrand JBH and sort of set some new systems into place and go, you know, what is it that we want to do? You know, let's find the love for construction again. So yeah, we started getting into the sort of higher end residential build, and we had an opportunity to build our sort of first high end home, and we jumped in on it, and we did a great job, and I just loved it. You know, the details, the more details, the heavier the detail, the more complex the construction. You know, there's stuff that's going to get me out of bed in the morning. And saying that, there's stuff that's going to keep you awake at night too, you know, but it's
they go hand in hand.
Yeah, totally, man, totally. So that's, once we started getting into that sort of that first big build, that's when I realised this is what we want. You know, the guys love it, and that's where we started to focus our energy on.
Yeah, and so you got the taste of that detailed work. Talk to me then about your company, where you're at now. Like, how big is your team? What's the structure of the company? You guys have office staff? Is it who does what?
So I guess the last couple of years have been a bit lean. So we have had to sort of let a few guys go and sort of held on to the core crew. So we run a team on the ground of sort of 8 guys. A few contractors will come and go. We have 3 in the office, admin, myself, and our project manager. JBH as a whole, I think we're in a really good position at the moment. Like I say, we've spent probably the last 18 months really developing a really strong team culture and implementing systems. I think with any construction company, systems are key. They're going to keep you running in a straight line. So we're in a position now where we are very confident with all of our pricing put forward, and the boys will deliver the targets that we give them. And I think being able to trust your crew on site, that they're going to turn up and get the job done, that's paramount. You've got to be able to trust the boys on the ground.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What are some of the systems? Because a lot of times builders talk about systems, processes, and then it becomes like a term, and the younger guys kind of go,
100%.
got to sort my systems and my processes, and then if you ask them sort of 1 centimeter deep question about it, they'll just fumble. But what are some of the what was important for you to start to set in place at the start to kind of build that out?
So one of the biggest things we were struggling with to start with, when you sort of start off, is sort of the data. I think is collecting data is very important. We would always struggle to go, where are these overruns coming from? Whether it's labour, materials. Being able to identify that was probably the first system we really wanted to put in place, because that's the biggest issue. That's your biggest pitfall in any construction, is if you've got overruns and you can't identify where they're coming from or why they're happening, I'm accountable to the client. The client's going to say, why? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't have the data to tell me why. So that was probably the first system we put in place. And that was implemented with a software system that we brought in, which is Builder Price. And that allowed us to completely break down our labour componentry down to like a daily task almost, and same with materials. So on site, would say to the boys, right, here's an app. They'd download the app. Every time they complete a task, whether it was 3 or 4 tasks throughout the day, they'd put the time allocated to each task. Same with materials. All the materials, that gets allocated to coded to a certain job or a certain task. And then that data sort of gets collated in the background, and I'll sit down weekly and I'll review all of that data and go, right, we're tracking on time, we're coming under, we're starting to peak or go over. That raises a question nice and early, why? Why have we gone over materials? What were these materials used for? Just allows us to combat that early in the piece, opposed to down the end of the project, and you're going, we've got overruns, and now it's too late to sort of go back and go, why, where, So that was the first system. And that's one of the most important ones, I believe, because, at the end of the day, you've got to know your numbers, and you've got to trust your numbers too. And then outside of that, health and safety systems are massive, When I sort of first started, health and safety didn't really exist. I was like, oh, what's this, So, we're pretty heavy on health and safety. A lot of residential builders are probably pretty light on it, but I believe, the commercial side, health and safety is massive, and with a lot of these larger architectural builds that we're doing at the moment, they are very sort of pushing the boundaries of the commercial realm, so a lot of concrete work, a lot of overhead lifting, 3-story projects, 4-story projects. I think health and safety needs to be implemented and needs to be considered by everybody, including the client, and it is quite a costly exercise as part of your P&Gs, and I think letting the client know that, we need to implement this, and it's for everyone's, personal sake. We want everyone to get home at night, safely.
Yeah.
So this is a cost that you're going to have to incur. And again, we've got apps that we put into place. I think with a system, any system that we try to generate, it's got to be easy. It's got to be user friendly. If it's a system that's going to incur a lot of paperwork. Guys are going to push it to the side and go, man, I don't have time for this. You know, I've got jobs to be done. So it's got to be easy. App-based, I've found, you know, it takes a couple of minutes. Sign in, fill out your task analysis or, you know, whatever you're doing for the day, whether it's a toolbox meeting on a Monday morning, the boys are there, what's our week looking like, guys? And then obviously we put that onto our site foreman. Everyone that comes into the site, they sign in, they get inducted, they deliver us with their own sort of triple SP or their health and safety procedures and protocols, you know, and we put that all into a database to make sure it's all in place.
And how did your team, what was the transition like, transitioning your team from having not a lot of that stuff to all of a sudden having to do a lot of download the app and is there a lot of like resistance or?
Not so much. I think everyone's sort of, you got to be all for, especially health and safety. Like end of the day, I'm putting this in place so you can go home, you know, without any injuries. You got all your fingers and toes intact, you know. So, we will sit down with our team when we're looking to bring some new system or approach to the company, even just to chat about our vision and our goals that we're looking to push forward. So we'll get everyone involved. We'll sit around a table, have a beer and go, hey, this is what we're looking, you know, let's talk about it. You know, this is why we want to do it and this is how we're going to do it. You know, you're on board.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty important to get the boys on board as well. You know, they got to want to be able to help you out.
Yeah, for sure. And if you explain to them why and the bigger picture and everyone's on the same page, and I think, making it part of your almost like your vision type chat makes it a lot better. To add to that, the team, people management, always a tricky one, right? How do you cultivate that good culture that you talked about? How do you keep the guys pumped to turn up to work?
Look, I think for me, when you go into a building site, you know, and you walk on and it's quite stale, it's quiet, you sort of go, what's going on? There's a vibe here that's not sort of singing. It's, you know, it's not resonating. So for me, when I walk onto a site, one of our sites, you know, the radio's going. It's not too loud, but you can hear some of the boys are singing. There's a bit of laughter going on, but the boys are chopping through the work. You know, they're getting it done. There's a bit of banter. That's a big tick. You know, they're enjoying themselves. Yeah, 100%. You know, you gotta want to turn up to work, and you want to turn up and chat about the game you watched last night, or you know, whatever. But in the same breath, you know, you want to get the work done. Yeah, we don't want guys standing around and whatnot. So we do monitor that. We're like, look, boys, you know, we understand you're going to be chatting, you're going to be talking, but let's just monitor that. Make sure we're working while we're doing it. You know, multitask. Let's go.
Yeah. You talk about the footy while you're getting something done, you know?
Totally. Yeah, totally. And that culture sort of, we kind of start with that. And then I think it's important if you have a bad egg in there or any low hanging fruit, you kind of got to get them out pretty quick because they'll tarnish the crew, you know? And, so like we're very fortunate at the moment. We've got a great group of guys, and they're like a good group of mates. You know, they all get on. We do a few social events together. So one of our apprentices sort of came to me and said, "Oh, I want to put a basketball team together. You know, let's all get together on a Monday night, play some basketball." Yeah, let's do it. You know, can't play basketball, don't really even know the game, but I'll go. So. You know, we had our first game on Monday night and it was a blowout. We got absolutely spanked, but shit, it was fun. You know, we had a heap of fun. So just things like that, you know, bowls on a Friday arvo with some beers or golf. And we run a JBH golf tournament, which we put out to all of our consultants, sub-trades, everyone we work with sort of throughout the year or any projects we're working on, you know, we'll invite everyone. So I think the boys get into that, you know, they like that, you know, because subbies come on, when's our golf day, you know, what's happening? So, you know, it's something that they can sort of get into and attach to as well, you know, so that's pretty cool.
How, I think that's great, eh? I love that basketball game as well, like, you know, bit of a laugh, you know, people can give each other shit the next day for poor performance and all that.
Yeah, that's it, you know, it's like,
a bit of banter.
Everyone's having a laugh after the game going, you know, you might be a few ACC forms to fill out on Monday morning or Tuesday morning. But yeah, the cool thing about that is I said to them, like, you know, I want this to be a team of JBH. So this is our team. If you've got kids that are keen to play over 16, obviously you have to be over 16 to play, bring them along, you know. So obviously we need a bit of youth in there. You know.
Yeah. Improve your chances.
Yeah, get gassed pretty quick. So yeah, my son plays, and our project manager, one of his young fellas, plays as well. Cool. So you know, that's cool to get in there and play basketball with your son too. Yeah, that's always a laugh. You know, that's how you do it, Dad.
Eh? Yeah. How hard is it to put a golf day together?
Oh man, it's pretty exhausting. You know, like a lot of work goes into it. So I had the idea. I was like, I think I went to, it might have been like a Master Builders golf day or a Placemakers golf day, and I was like, this is cool. You know, it's a real good vibe, and everyone's relaxed. And I thought we could do this just as a bit of maybe a bit of a thank you to all of our sub-trades. You know, you don't really get enough time to say, hey guys, thanks for all the effort you put in. You know, we are heavily reliant on you guys really picking up the slack for us and making sure you do a good job. So it's just a way to go out there and say thank you to them.
Yeah.
Thank you to the designers, consultants, whoever's involved with JBH, I guess, like that extended family. You know, it's like, just go and have some golf and have some beers and have a laugh. And
so how many people, what's the logistics of setting up a golf day? How many people do you have to
get? So I'll send it out to, I think I sent an email out the other day actually. There's 53 people that we sent it out to, including sort of companies, you know, and it's put in a team of 4, you know. So we're looking to probably anywhere between 70 to probably 120, 130 people.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Next level, then that's good.
Yeah, it is. And then I'll put it out to, you know, our merchants and some of the big suppliers for sponsors.
Yeah.
Put some cool prizes together, and yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it's a bit goes into it though. Like, again, you're playing the game of Ambrose. You know, a lot of tradies play golf. Some of them are pretty handy. Some of them have got a good handicap. Some never play at all. So you got to level that playing field. So we've got to sort of, you know, balance up the teams and yeah.
A quick shout out to Forte supporting today's episode. They work across flooring, wall surfaces, exteriors, and more. But what sets them apart is how their timber performs over time. Forte is trusted by architects, designers, and builders, not just for their materials, but for the way they support projects from vision to completion. It's about enriching connections and creating something built to last. Learn more at forte.co.nz. So in terms of your company at the moment, are you guys always looking for new talent, or is it sort of, have you just consolidated recently? Like, how do you, I'm trying to get an idea of how you attract good talent. Like a lot of, there may be more builders around now to hire. How do you get good guys to come to you?
Yeah, I think in the past, typically it has been challenging to find good builders, even just builders in general, because everyone's been so busy. So that's kind of part of you know, part of my vision, I guess, with the company is creating that team culture that, you know, guys are like, man, those dudes look like they have some fun and they pump out some cool projects. So I want to go and work for them, you know. So you're kind of, I guess you're kind of recruiting that way. Typically, we will try and generate through young apprentices and build our builders the way we want them to be. So we, at the moment, we're running a, what is it? It's through sort of like a work academy through Tauranga Boys College.
Cool.
It's like a gateway program that they'll, there's a couple of young guys there that are sort of doing, like, thinking about getting into building or into the construction side. And we'll take them on for a day a week, you know, for 10 weeks. It's a good way to sort of filter through the sort of the young guys out there and potentially find someone who's actually really, really passionate about the industry. And so we've got a couple that at the moment that we're looking at. And one of them's, you know, passionate. He's keen, asking heaps of questions. So straight away that sort of resonates with me, going, this is a good potential for a nice young apprentice, someone who's going to be keen to grow and learn and evolve. So we'll take them on and then, you know, we'll train them hard and we'll sort of teach them what we expect and what we want from them. And then 4 years' time, we'll sort of reap the rewards, hopefully. If
Yeah.
they don't leave and head overseas.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's good practice for an apprentice when they got trained up, right? To stay with a builder. Like I know a lot of guys that get qualified and then boom, they're out of here.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think so. I think there's a little bit of loyalty. I believe that is probably lacking a little bit. It does take a lot of time and money to train an apprentice. So I think, look, it should be, loyalty. You should give us a couple of years if you can. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to hold anyone back. I'm not going to hold it against them if they're like, hey, man, thanks for the opportunity. I've loved every minute of it, but I'm going overseas. I'm going to Australia, I'm going to Europe, or whatever. I want to go to Canada and snowboard. Go and do it, man. Go and live your life. You know, the door's always open if you come back. So you kind of hope that they'll come back and give you a couple of years after that. But yeah, you can never tell. So
yeah. So you guys work on amazing projects. A bit of a look on your website, bit of a sneak peek.
Yeah.
Socials and so on, which is awesome. Like how do you guys get? Builders always want to know, how do you get those epic projects? Is it that they come through architects? They come directly from the client? Do you guys do some great marketing that we know about? Like, how do these projects come across your desk?
Most of them historically will come through designers that we sort of work with. Recently, I think now that we are getting a bit of sort of traction with our brand, we are getting clients sort of ringing up going, hey, look, we've seen your builds, we've seen your socials, whatever, do you want to come and have a chat about a project? So we're seeing that more and more, which is cool. So it's sort of going, our branding is working. But we have some pretty strong relationships with a few designers in town, and that's important to sort of hold and maintain those relationships because, they'll feed us the work, and then, we'll feed them some work to keep that united, really.
And what do you think they love about working with you guys?
Look, I mean, for me, it's part of our vision was, with JBH is we're going to create a journey, and that journey is a collaboration between the designer, the homeowner, and the builder. And that journey consists of right at the get-go, we're involved with the conceptual designs, and we'll price it to make sure we're on the right track, and then we'll kind of hold the client's hands right through the whole construction phase to the delivery. And part of that is sort of working with the designers too to make sure that their designs will match the brief that's given, the brief and the budget. I think there's a lot of sort of misconception between the client wants this brief, but they've given us this budget. They don't quite align. So that's kind of where the builder jumps in the middle and goes, hey, hang on, you want X, but you're giving us Y. We've got to meet in the middle. So, if you don't do that early, I believe there's a lot of pitfalls that'll come out of that. You come to the final set of plans to price, and all of a sudden you're $1 million over budget. The client's looking at the designer going, mate, what have you done? You've blown my budget. There's some dirty water there.
Yeah.
So I like to think we control sort of, we kind of bridge that essentially, and we'll control the pricing right through. And then my job is to make the designer's vision turn into reality and essentially make them look good as well. And it keeps that partnership strong. So at the end of the build, you want the client to go, man, this is a great team. The designer's amazing. They've put together this beautiful package for us. The builder's delivered. Would recommend you on, and that's kind of that journey that we want, that get to the end, and that's relationship building, between all parties. There's no sour taste left in the mouth. I think that's probably the biggest one. I guess that if you can do that and you can deliver that project and essentially the client's happy with, the designer, the builder, that collaboration, then you've done your job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys get them to, when clients come to you, do you get them to sign like an early contract or agreement or prelim agreement?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah. So we have a prelim agreement that we'll sort of step into and say, look, sign this up and this will be voided once the contract's signed, and those costs get soaked up in our P&Gs and our overheads, yeah.
And you price that yourself, or you get an external?
No, we do all the pricing in-house. I think that's absolute paramount. It's got to be done. Yeah. I have, in the past, I have used QSs, but they've just been so far off the ballpark. It's just, just throws us under the bus straight away. So, like, especially when you're dealing with large projects, in all fairness, the designs are never 100% complete. There's always stuff that's going to be missed out, or a lot of you got to work on your sort of past experience to sort of identify areas that there could potentially be hidden costs. So, and I've had this discussion the other day with my PM in house, and I sort of said, look, I think it's important for us when we're pricing these jobs and doing the labour breakdown. It allows us to dive deep into the plans, and at that point, we can identify any flaws or any areas that we can see issues arising pretty quickly. So because you're running over it with a microscope, every detail. You want to pick everything out of it, so that before the project even starts, before the tenders or has been awarded, that job inside out.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite important.
100%, yeah. Because, I mean, a builder's has to be across 95% of everything.
Yeah.
And there's no point just getting them in so late and then be like, cool, yeah, you're now responsible. It's like, well, I don't even know anything 100%. About this.
I mean, it's the same with our site foreman. It's like, it's me turning up saying, right, here's your site Monday, here's your plans, let's go. And he's going, what? This is a 2-year build. What am I doing? Where do I start? So we get them in early as well. And we're saying, right, we've got this next contract coming up. Here's our project. Start looking through the plans now.
Yeah.
Get yourself familiar with what's going to happen. I need you to know when we're handing over, and the details on the roof or the finishing details. You need to know what's happening there when we're doing the foundations or we're setting the site out. I want you all over it.
What contracts do you guys use when you eventually sign up the building contract? And are there any sort of particular clauses you guys put in to kind of cover yourself legally?
We sort of stick with the master builders contract, and then we sort of have several clauses in the back that will sort of state, project will be, run by JBH and all the bits and pieces and health and safety and all the rest of it. But the master builder contract's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you been sued before?
No.
Okay.
Don't even want to be either.
Just FYI.
Yeah, totally.
What are some of the biggest mistakes you made early on in your business career that you see a lot of guys make?
I think there's plenty. Like, you got to live and you got to learn, right? So you got to make mistakes to grow. I think knowing your numbers is the big one. You spend your sort of time swinging a hammer, and then all of a sudden you're sitting behind a computer and you're an accountant punching spreadsheets. So you got to learn your numbers very fast. You got to know what's costing you money and what your bottom line's doing. If that's not stacking up, you're not going to be around for very long. So obviously, starting off, you're losing money. You think you're making money, but then you're sort of going, where's all this money? Why is it not here? So
that's a big tax bill.
Yeah. Someone's spending the money. But you learn pretty quickly, go, that's why, the net's open. It's just seeping. So you start to sort of dive deep into that again. And
nothing worse than those like meetings you have your accountants, and they've got like a little smile on their face, and they're like, mate, you had a good year last year, and you're like, where's the money?
Yeah, that's it. Show me the money. Yeah.
It's like, you look happy, but I want to know where the money is.
Yeah, 100%. So, I think, look, we learn on every job. There's always something new that you're going to learn. So I think that's part of your growth, right? You adapt and you take those lessons and you implement them and you move forward.
Yeah. What sort of mentorship have you taken on over the years? Like, are you kind of guy that like asks, are you kind of like, I'll just make the mistakes and figure it out? Or do you ask, are there builders that are maybe a few years ahead of you? Or have you joined like a coaching program over the years? Or what have you done in terms of mentorship to kind of gain knowledge from others?
Yeah, I think that's pretty crucial. Like, it's a good question. Like, I have, you align yourself with guys in similar sort of situations, and it's good to talk, and we probably don't do it enough. I find that a lot of builders are keep their cards pretty close to the chest. This is competition. But I definitely feel as I sort of go through the years, I think it's when you do talk to other guys, that's important. But I definitely, in terms of mentorship, I've got a couple of friends that run some big successful companies, and I'll chew their ears. I'll sit down and I go, man, how'd you do this? How'd you grow so fast? How do you hold the growth? How's it sustainable? So I definitely think it's important to do that. I'm open. I'm open to learn from anyone who's willing to sort of have the time of the day to have a chat with me. So yeah, I have looked at coaching. I think there's a lot of value to be held in that as well. Just to fine tune maybe the more financial side of it more than anything. Like I'm no accountant. So I think that's that numbers game, being all over it again.
Yeah.
I'd like to do better.
What are the numbers that you kind of look at the moment where you're at right now in your business that's important in terms of making sure you're on track?
Yeah, I think it's, project by project, it's definitely, the budget's important to control those numbers with the client. But as from the business perspective and the financial side, you got to control your overheads. You got to be continuously monitoring them. Essentially, those overheads are like a fixed cost, right? That's coming out of your bottom line. So we look at our turnover. We look at what our margins are that we put to the job. We look at what our GP is, in general, and then what our net profit is at the end of that, and we package that all together and work backwards to implement on how we're going to price the job.
Yeah.
So if we're not hitting our targets, we're either and we're running on time, and we there's little reworks, then we need to look to adjust to hit our financial targets. And that's a big one, because you've got to grow, and without your financials, your business is going to get in a rut real quick. Yeah.
Talking about overheads, do a lot of you guys have like utes and vans, and do you pay for it? How does that work?
Yeah, totally. So I mean, we do, if you're a site foreman, your perk is you'll get a ute, you'll get a fuel card. That's part of the their job package.
What do they get? What ute do they get?
We like to run the Rangers. Everyone
Nice.
wants to run around in a Ranger. So yeah, we'll put them in a Ranger. And it's like, it does. It's an expensive truck to put your guys in, but they appreciate it. They want to be driving in luxury. Look after it. So yeah, that's perks, and obviously because we're a smaller company, we can control our overheads. We've got a very small crew in the office. Admin sort of part time. There's myself and a PM, which his wage will typically get charged to a task per site. So that's sort of we can redeem that. We run a small office sort of from home. So I built quite a large shed with a big office block on it.
Cool.
So we can control those overheads, So we're having a hard time, if we've got a project that's been benched or delayed, that's an element that we can control pretty easily, and we don't have to stress about too much,
Yeah. What do you think, if you look back at your business over the last 10 years or so, was there like a one project you can think back on that you lost a bunch of money on? Like, what's the biggest sort of mistake financially that you can look back on?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's been any one project that we've lost a bunch of money. There's definitely, small amounts here and there that you've probably left on the table. I think that was probably part of that sort of teething process when you start. You're a bit green, you're a bit naive, and you sort of think you're charging the right amount, and it's but it's actually not. That amount that you margin that you're charging is actually barely covering your overheads.
Yeah.
So that's getting to know your numbers. I think that's pretty important, to control that. You're always going to have a job where a mistake will happen. It's construction. Mistakes are going to happen, and I think it's pretty important that you put your hand up, you own it. So yeah, that was my mistake. I'll fix it.
Yeah.
Without trying to sort of hide it or get away with it. So I think, and I think clients will respect that. You know, we've had several say, you know, yeah, thanks. You know, that means a lot.
Yeah.
Whether that job might have been a, you know, a $2,000 mistake or a $5,000 mistake, you own it. Yeah, but there's,
Yeah.
I don't think there has been any that jump out me to sort of anything that's sort of north of sort of 10K.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's good.
Yeah. So typically we'll own it, but that's one thing that we push on the guys pretty heavily is like, look, man, we need to control the reworks because reworks is costing me money. So just think, you know, really put your thought process into action and control that, you know, nice and early.
Yeah. Could you go on holiday for 3 weeks and the business runs smoothly? Can you?
Yep.
Are you in a position now you've removed yourself from the business enough where that can happen?
Yeah, totally, 100%. And that's kind of where I want to be at, you know. And like I say, I've brought in a project manager, and he's amazing at what he does, you know. And there's a reason why I put him into the project management because he's organised. You know, far more organised than me. So, you know, you find the right guy for the right job who can do a better job than you put him in there. And he delivers. So he's all over it. Like I say, we're in the office together. We price together. We're running the schedules together. So essentially we're job sharing. So I can just, you know, I can go overseas for a month. We went to America for a month and he took the reins, came back, smooth sailing, you know, no issues. He has a lot to do with the clients as well. So that introduction gets made very early. And our foreman on site, you know, all he does is he'll just palm more workload onto them.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, right, I'm taking Justin's role. I need you to pick up the slack. And they do it, you know, and that's cool.
Yeah. There's a lot of builders that run sort of like they're the center of the universe of their business. They're right in the middle.
You remove them and it stops, yeah.
And it's a bunch of them with a bunch of helpers around.
Yeah.
Right? And they bought themselves a job and they got like a bunch of people just like a bunch of minions just helping them.
Yeah.
Keep this thing afloat,
yeah.
right? Which is a lot. This is how I ran my business for years, you know what I mean? So I understand. Well, what advice do you have for a builder that's in that position right now who's saying, hey, I'm sick of this. I want to get to a point where I can remove myself for a few weeks. I can actually take a holiday. The business can run without me. What are some of the first steps that they need to put in place or just a mentality shift?
Yeah, I mean, we're still working on that. But I would say you got to find the people, you know, like you got to find the right people for those positions. But again, you know, you can't just go out and hire a project manager if you can't afford to, you know, so you got to work on those numbers. If your business is profitable, then you go and look to, you know, bring these guys into those positions and look for that growth. And there's a communication too. I think if you can communicate with your team and everyone knows what the right hand's saying to the left, then, you know, that barrier is eliminated. So we put accountability onto our boys as well. We're like, you know, we're all in this together, guys. You know, if we do a good job, it's not my job. I haven't done a good job. We've done a good job, you know. So
yeah,
we make sure that they're all accountable and they're all on board. So they'll help steer the boat in the right direction.
Yeah,
when you need them to, I guess.
And I guess a big part is that what you mentioned before as well around the systems and processes.
Yeah.
Got to have those in place first.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, you know, without those, and like you say, a system can be anything. But if you have those simple procedures in place and you bring the right guy in who's got the right mindset, got the right work ethic, you know, that will help you to sort of just be able to take pressure off, you know, and potentially you can then remove yourself out of the business without it falling over.
Yeah.
You know, take that time away.
Yeah. And it takes a bit of time, you know. The day you decide you're going to do it, now it's going to take a bit of time to get there.
100%. And that's sort of one thing that I've always sort of thought about. And I've got an extremely active mind, so I struggle to sleep at night. I'm always thinking, what's next, you know, what can we do? So part of my vision to bring our project manager in was I can palm a lot of my daily workload off to him to free up a couple of days a week for me to step out of the business and just work on it, you know, and just whether that may be sort of that one-on-one, professional coaching to chew over the numbers, or we've just actually stepped in and started up a development sort of side company, to start sort of working on the side. So it allows me time to spend on that, and get a bit of growth there. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's epic.
And that's definitely important to have those right guys,
You mentioned you have a busy brain, busy mind, and and it sounds like you're a hard worker just from this conversation and background and so on. Sometimes can be a bit of a cocktail for burnout.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Have you ever got yourself to a point where you were just burnt out?
I think there's probably been moments that have been hard. Like I say, I take things on quite personally as well. If a client has a complaint, I'll take that personally, and I'll ponder on it and I'll, or if things aren't going our way, or if the industry's a bit quiet, we haven't got those leads coming through like we should have, or we haven't got enough staff to take on the workflow that we've got. I would like to say I probably handle stress quite well. But then I'm pretty lucky with my wife. She's pretty much the rock of our relationship, really. She takes care of the whole household, the kids, make sure they're sorted, and they get to where they need to be and they're doing what they need to be doing. And I've always got her to sit there and listen as much as she probably doesn't want to. She's like, oh, okay. But she'll listen and it's cool. And I think that's important to have that relationship where you can have someone to lean on when you're having a bad day, or if you're coming through the door and you've just heard from a client once you're building an epic home, you're bouncing off the walls, she'll be like, yep, here we go. Yeah, I'll listen. So no, that's amazing. And she's amazing. She holds it all together. So yeah, helps me good. Sort of burden that.
Marrying well, that's always a good one.
Yeah.
So you've never wanted to throw in the towel. You've never started running the numbers of, or like the steps of like, how can I wind this baby down and get these people different jobs and.
Yeah, 100%. I think everyone has those moments. I think there's moments where you go through hard times. Like I say, the last couple of years have been pretty hard, been pretty lean. You get a lot of projects come in, you spend a lot of time on them, and then all of a sudden they disappear, they get benched, or the client doesn't want to spend that money anymore, and the value's not in the project. So, yeah. There's definitely those sort of moments.
And how do you deal with those sort of knocks? And how do you keep your mind in the game? And
I think it's kind of just pick yourself back up. And construction has its peaks and troughs. Like your peaks are amazing. You're on. You got heaps of work. People are talking about your builds, and then you have those troughs. Those low points. Where maybe the money's not where it should be, your profit margins aren't where they should be. I think it's just trying to balance yourself out, and just sit back, take a moment and go, why do I do this? Why am I here? And then go, that's why I do it. That's the passion for the build, and the delivery and just the joy you get from the clients. I think that's a big one. You kind of extract that from the clients as well, and you're sort of attached to that a little bit, that the joy that they get out of their new projects, their life investment or their life savings that they're pouring into a project, and you've just produced this amazing project for them. Yeah. And they're stoked, and it's that joy you get out of that. I think that's kind of what you hold on to, and you go, that's why I'm here. The lows will go. Yeah. The lows will go and the highs will come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way of looking at it. Do you have any sort of routines or, like practical things that you do that's every day that sort of helps you?
Yeah, look, I like to keep active. I think that's important, Man, I'm punching 40, I've got to keep this body moving. So
what do you do? You're in good shape. What do you do?
I go to the gym, every morning. Not so much lately, been a bit lazy, but hey, discipline, I need to get that back. I get up 5:30, I'll go to the gym for an hour, come home and then, get into work, nice clear mind. But I think keeping active, You know, I'm trying to disconnect from work on the weekends after hours is good. You know, so it's always hard to do that as a business owner. You may be at home or in a social environment, but there's always some element ticking in the back of your mind that you're going, got to do this, got to do. You know, it's always there. So I don't know. I think for me, I like to dive into a good book.
Yeah.
A good fiction book and just get lost in the adventure. You know, that will fully disconnect me from everything. And I can just sit there and read for hours on end.
That's awesome. Yeah. It is a good way of just really relaxing the brain, and just getting you to snap out.
100%.
So in terms of where you're at now, you know, you're not quite halfway through your life yet, Justin, but you know, you're approaching that in the next 10 years probably.
Yeah.
Where you're at right now, what does success mean to you now?
I think there's sort of success is a big word. There's two levels for me. There's that sort of personal side. You know, success for me has been able to take the time to spend with my family. That's the most important thing to me is my family. You know, they're everything. So I need to be able to walk away from the business, you know, for a day to go and watch my son play a rugby tournament, you know, or to go away on a family holiday with the family, or just to go to the beach, you know, to be able to have the time to do that and not have to worry about how the bills are going to get paid. I think that not so much the financial, it's more so just not having that stress, you know, that burden that you can't spend time with your family because you feel you have to be working. That's more the personal, is, you know, making sure the family, we've got what we need, kids are happy, kids are healthy, you know, there's no stress in the household, you know, and I can support them. For the business, I think success for me is, I think you're always going to strive for success, regardless to where you are or what your position is. For me, at the moment, it's that journey that we're talking about. You know, I want success is to deliver the project, to sit down at the end of the project with the designer, with the builder, with the team, have a beer, have a barbecue, and the client's stoked. You know, he's stoked, and they're happy with how you delivered that budget, the quality, and the timeframes. And those are the three pillars of construction that I sort of talk to the boys about quite a lot. You know, we've got to nail all three pillars.
Yeah.
For this journey to be successful, we've got to crush all three pillars, you know. So we push that pretty hard, but, you know, recently the projects have been successful. And we get a lot of word of mouth, a lot of referrals from our past clients, and that is success for me in the business, you know.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's a great way to finish us off. Time flies when you're having fun.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you for making the big drive, mate. Coming all the way up here. Really appreciate it. And I had a real fun conversation. So
it was good.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
Cheers.
All good. Thank you.
That's it for today's episode. And thanks again to Forte for making this week's episode possible. If you're after timber surfaces that don't just look beautiful but are built to endure, Forte is leading the way. With a focus on sustainability and craftsmanship and unparalleled performance, they're helping bring ambitious projects to life across interiors and exteriors.